The Man Who Knew Infinity, The Life of Srinivasa Ramanujan. In the history of mathematics, there are names that resonate like echoes of superhuman intelligence. Among them, the figure of Srinivasa Ramanujan shines with a singular and tragic light. A man who, without conventional training, seemed to converse directly with the gods of numbers. This is the story of a prodigy who emerged from the most absolute humility to change the world. Our story begins in a small town called Erode, in southern India, on December 22, 1887. Srinivasa Ramanujan was born into a poor family, a boy who would change the history of mathematics. His childhood in Kumbakonam was ordinary, until at age 10, a book fell into his hands and changed everything. It was a synopsis of elementary results in pure and applied mathematics by George Shoebridge-Carr. A huge volume, a simple compilation of thousands of theorems without proofs. For most, an indecipherable brick. For Ramanujan, it was a revelation. It was a catalogue of mysteries to be solved, a treasure map. For him, numbers weren't just symbols. They had personality, life. It was as if they whispered their secrets to him. From a young age, he displayed an extraordinary talent for numbers. By the age of 12, he had mastered advanced mathematics without any teacher's help. He would spend hours solving problems, filling notebooks with formulas that seemed incomprehensible to others. However, his passion was also his obstacle. He neglected other school subjects, and that cost him scholarships and opportunities. Life wasn't easy. He often didn't even have money for paper, and he solved calculations on recycled paper or with chalk on borrowed blackboards. So absorbed in this universe, Ramanujan abandoned everything else. His formal studies, except for mathematics, collapsed. He lost his university scholarship. To his family and community, he was a useless genius, a failure obsessed with meaningless scribbles. No one could have imagined that this young man, raised in poverty and without a complete formal education, would become one of the most brilliant geniuses of all time. Isolated and misunderstood, Ramanujan lived years of extreme poverty. He worked as a clerk at the port of Madras, earning barely £20 a year. But neither hunger nor misunderstanding could stop him. He filled notebooks after notebooks with his formulas, theorems, and identities that emerged from his intuition, often attributing them to his family goddess, Namagiri. It was one of the most extraordinary phenomena. Ramanujan did not prove like Western mathematicians. He saw. The proof came later, if it came at all. For him, the truth of a formula was self-evident. By the age of 20, Ramanujan had already developed hundreds of theorems and formulas. Many did not exist in any known textbook. But isolated in India, without academic contacts, his work risked being lost to oblivion. Aware that his work was too advanced for India, he decided to seek help in the world that had created those theorems he loved so much, England. In 1913, filled with courage and desperation to share his knowledge, he sent a letter. The 9-page letter, packed with 120 theorems, arrived on the desk of one of Cambridge's most prestigious mathematicians, Godfrey Harold Hardy. Inside the envelope, he included pages full of formulas without proofs. Hardy was an atheist, a rationalist. For him, mathematics was about rigor, logic, step-by-step proofs, and formality. That letter from an unknown young Indian was disconcerting. Hardy, initially skeptical, was astonished. Some formulas were familiar to him, but many others were completely new, which seemed incredibly strange to him. And others simply seemed wrong. The letter he received began, "Dear Mr. Hardy, please forgive my boldness. I have made a thorough study of divergent series, and everyone says they are a dead end, but I have deduced that they can be used to obtain useful results." Hardy almost dismissed the letter as a bad joke. But something brought him back. One formula, in particular, related to the number pi, was so incredibly complex and elegant that it could not have been the work of a fraud. That night, Hardy and his colleague Littlewood analyzed the letter until dawn. Their verdict was clear. They were looking at the work of a first-rate genius, a Riemann or an Euler. Thus, Hardy acknowledged that he was looking at a genius. Hardy said that the theorems had to be true, because if they weren't, no one would have had the imagination to invent them. Hardy responded immediately. He invited him to Cambridge. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But for Ramanujan, an orthodox man, crossing the ocean was violating the rules of his caste. After an intense internal struggle and, according to him, a dream in which his goddess gave him her blessing, Ramanujan accepted. That long-distance encounter changed the history of mathematics. Hardy brought Ramanujan to Cambridge, where they began a collaboration that revolutionized number theory, elliptic functions, and infinite series. In 1914, Ramanujan arrived in a gray and frigid Cambridge. The contrast could not have been greater. The man from Madras, accustomed to heat and spices, found himself faced with a world of formalities, bland food, and a relentless winter. In England, Ramanujan faced the cold climate, loneliness, and cultural differences. As a strict vegetarian, he often went hungry. Furthermore, his health began to deteriorate. But mathematically, it was a blast. In just a few years, he produced mathematical results that continue to be studied today. His mind seemed to connect with a universe of numbers that few could understand. Hardy took charge of providing the rigor it lacked, while Ramanujan opened windows to mathematical universes Hardy hadn't even known existed. Together they published groundbreaking papers. According to Hardy himself, his greatest discovery wasn't a theorem, it was Ramanujan. The war, the climate, a nearly impossible vegetarian diet, and an obsession with work undermined his health. In 1917, he fell seriously ill. Doctors diagnosed tuberculosis, but they suspect it could have been a severe vitamin deficiency. He was admitted to sanatoriums, where he continued to scribble formulas. In 1918, Ramanujan became the first Indian to be elected a Fellow of the Royal Society, one of the highest honors in the world of science. He was hospitalized several times as his health deteriorated dramatically, and although he managed to become a Fellow of the prestigious Royal Society, his body could no longer hold up. In 1919, weak and homesick, Ramanujan returned to India, hoping to regain his strength. He was a national hero, but a dying man. Even so, his mind was not at rest. On his deathbed, in a house in Chetput, near Madras, he produced his most mysterious work, the Lost Notebook. A collection of 600 astonishing formulas, written almost like a mathematical testament. Mock theta functions, partitions of numbers, concepts so advanced that it would take mathematicians decades to begin to understand and prove them. According to Ramanujan, each prime number, each function, was a verse in the poem his goddess dictated to him. That's why he had to write them all down before he left. On April 26, 1920, at just 32 years old, Ramanujan died. But his legacy was very much alive. Where did his ideas come from? It is a mystery that endures. Despite his short life, he left behind nearly 3,900 mathematical results. Many continue to be confirmed to this day. His notebooks became a gold mine for mathematicians of the 20th and 21st centuries, inspiring modern research in physics, number theory, and even fields such as computer science. His work is fundamental in areas such as number theory, analysis, and, incredibly, even in theoretical physics, for understanding the behavior of black holes. Hardy once said that collaborating with Ramanujan was the greatest honor of his life. And Ramanujan himself claimed that the formulas were revealed to him by his family goddess, Namagiri. Ramanujan's relationship with his family goddess, the goddess Namagiri, was not simply a pious anecdote. It was the cornerstone of his identity and the very origin of his mathematical genius, according to his own perception. Ramanujan was born into an orthodox and very religious family in South India. His religion was a central part of his daily life. His mother was an extremely devout woman, and it was she who instilled in Ramanujan a deep faith in the goddess Namagiri, the family deity to whom they attributed their protection and guidance. The goddess Namagiri is a manifestation of the goddess Lakshmi, a goddess of fortune and prosperity, or, according to other traditions, of the goddess Parvati. Her main temple is in the town of Namakkal, in Tamil Nadu, not far from where Ramanujan grew up. Unlike many scientists who attribute their discoveries to a process of logical reasoning, Ramanujan claimed that his mathematical ideas came directly from the goddess. Ramanujan said that the goddess often appeared to him in dreams. During these dreams, she showed him complex mathematical formulas, infinite series, and identities. Upon awakening, his urgency was to transcribe them as quickly as possible before they faded from his memory. According to him, an equation has no meaning to him unless it represents a thought from God. There is a well-known story, even told by Ramanujan to Hardy, in which he said that sometimes, upon awakening, he would see blood flowing while a hand wrote formulas on his tongue. This vivid image shows the extent to which his visions were intense sensory and physical experiences, not just abstract ideas. Even in his last months of life, while ill, he claimed to continue receiving these visits from Namagiri, who dictated new formulas to him. For Ramanujan, the truth of a formula did not require a Western-style logical demonstration because its validity had been revealed to him. The goddess could not show him something false. This partly explains why he often omitted demonstrations in his notebooks. For him, the formula was the self-evident truth. The goddess's intervention was not limited to mathematics. Ramanujan consulted her for crucial life decisions. The greatest example is his journey to England. As an Orthodox Brahmin, crossing the ocean was considered a religious transgression that would render him impure and ostracize him from his community. Ramanujan was devastated. Finally, he agreed to go only after his mother declared that she had had a dream in which the goddess Namagiri gave her blessing, saying that she would not stand in the way of her son fulfilling his destiny. The goddess legitimized a decision that would otherwise have been impossible for him. On the other hand, he also received her guidance in his daily life, as he is said to have consulted the goddess for minor decisions, relying on signs and dreams to guide his actions. For G. H. Hardy, a rationalist atheist, this side of Ramanujan was the greatest enigma. Hardy deeply admired his genius but could neither understand nor accept his religious source of inspiration. He saw the results as a product of genius and intuition. But Ramanujan did not see it that way. For him, mathematics was a sacred language that connected the human with the divine. In a famous anecdote, Hardy once visited Ramanujan in the hospital and remarked that he had arrived in a taxi with the boring number 1729. Hardy told Ramanujan, "I hope that's not a bad omen." To which Ramanujan replied, "No, it's a very interesting number. It's the smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of two positive cubes in two different ways." For Hardy, this was pure mathematical genius. For Ramanujan, it was another numerical truth inherent in the universe, a pattern that had always been there, waiting to be seen, perhaps revealed once again by the goddess who ordered the cosmos. This spiritual bond drove Ramanujan to work with a unique passion. He saw his work not as academic research, but as a religious mission. His faith in Namagiri gave him strength, even in the midst of poverty, illness, and loneliness. Today, historians and scientists view this relationship in several ways. 1. It was the language and frame of reference Ramanujan had for understanding a talent that came so naturally and overwhelmingly to him that he could only attribute it to a divine force. 2. Psychologists and neuroscientists might argue that the goddess was the personification of his own unconscious, a mind so powerful that it processed mathematical information at a deep level and then presented it to his consciousness in the form of visions and intuitions. 3. Ramanujan's story raises a profound question about the source of extreme human creativity. Is it purely a biological and neuronal process? or is there an element of mystery that we cannot yet explain? Ramanujan firmly believed the latter. In conclusion, the goddess Namagiri was not a folkloric detail in Ramanujan's life. She was the key that allowed him to access his own genius and the justification he needed to trust intuitions that defied all conventional logic. She was the bridge between his traditional world and the abstract world of pure mathematics, allowing him to navigate a life full of contradictions and, ultimately, gift the world with a work that remains a source of wonder and study a century later. What is surprising about Ramanujan is that, although he worked more than 100 years ago, many of his ideas, which seemed incomprehensible or useless in his time, now have applications in science, technology, and even in areas he would never have imagined. Ramanujan's discoveries, which in his time were seen as abstract curiosities of mysterious beauty, have found surprising and profound applications in modern science. His work is a classic example of how pure mathematics, created without a practical application in mind, can decades later become the perfect tool for understanding the universe. Some of the most important applications were seen in string theory and theoretical physics, with Mach theta functions. Ramanujan, in a deathbed letter to Hardy, described these functions, but their full meaning remained a mystery. Mathematicians spent decades trying to understand them. It wasn't until the 2000s that physicists discovered that modular Mach theta functions, the formal concept derived from Ramanujan's ideas, are crucial for understanding the entropy of black holes. In string theory, the BPS numbers, special states of particles or black holes, are calculated using modular functions. It turned out that to accurately describe certain black holes, traditional modular functions were not sufficient. Ramanujan's Mach theta functions were needed. They provide the mathematical corrections needed to calculate the properties of these extreme objects. Broadly speaking, his modular functions are now fundamental in high-energy physics. In string theory, which attempts to unify all the forces in the universe, Ramanujan's work helps describe the behavior of subatomic particles. They are also useful in the study of black holes and quantum thermodynamics. In the areas of cryptography and computation, Ramanujan made fundamental contributions to partition theory. Regarding the application of these contributions, although not directly used to encrypt messages, the study of partitions and their properties is vital in computational number theory, since understanding the distribution and properties of partitions helps develop and test algorithms that are the basis of modern cryptographic systems, such as RSA, which is based on the difficulty of factoring large numbers. Algorithms. Efficient algorithms for calculating partitions inspired by Ramanujan's formulas are used in stress testing for compilers and hardware, as they require intensive mathematical operations. So, basically, his research on modular functions and infinite series is applied in current digital security. Modern cryptographic systems, those that protect your passwords, credit cards, or online transactions, use mathematical structures based on theories pioneered by Ramanujan's contributions. On the other hand, his contributions involved the development of fast calculation algorithms. Ramanujan discovered several infinite series for calculating pi that are remarkably efficient. One of his formulas, recovered and adapted by the Chudnovsky brothers in 1989, is the basis of the algorithms used today to break records for calculating the digits of pi. How does it work? Each new term in his series adds an enormous number of correct digits. This makes it incredibly fast compared to previous formulas. The Chudnovskys used a variant of his formula to calculate trillions of digits of pi. So, in summary, some data processing and numerical series algorithms are based on Ramanujan's formulas. His famous approximation to the number pi remains one of the fastest and most efficient, used on supercomputers to calculate tens of trillions of digits of pi. In the field of representation theory and combinatorial analysis, Ramanujan's work on series, continued fractions, and constants such as the Landau-Ramanujan constant is fundamental to pure mathematical analysis. This work is applied in probability and statistics, in the study of the distribution of prime numbers and other numerical sequences, in partition theory, which deals with how numbers can be decomposed into sums. His formulas allow for the solution of combinatorial problems applied to data analysis, networks, and algorithms. This impacts probability models used in economics, biology, and even financial market predictions. Materials science and chemistry. Mathematical models for understanding crystal structures and how molecules combine, combinatorial problems, are often based on this area of mathematics, which Ramanujan helped to enrich. Some of his series equations and elliptic functions aid in modeling patterns in biology, such as cell growth or the spread of disease. Also in the analysis of artificial neural networks, the basis of modern artificial intelligence. In the field of communications technology and signal processing, Ramanujan's theta function. He introduced a generalized theta function that has unique properties. Recently, engineers have discovered that this function is ideal for building perfect filters for digital signal processing. These filters can be used in wireless communications, 4G, 5G to decode signals more efficiently and reduce interference. Speech and image recognition, to analyze and filter complex data. The history of Ramanujan's applications is a powerful reminder that the value of basic scientific research is not always immediately obvious. His intuition, which seemed almost supernatural, has proven to be one of the most productive intellectual investments of the 20th century, providing the mathematical tools for some of the most advanced fields of physics and engineering in the 21st century. Even today, for many, working on Ramanujan's formulas is like receiving a message in a bottle from another time. We solve a problem today, and we find the answer, already written by him 100 years ago. Simply put, although Ramanujan worked with chalk and paper, many of his formulas proved to be bridges to 21st century science. From the encryption of your cell phone to theories that attempt to explain the origin of the cosmos. Ramanujan's story is an eternal reminder that genius can flourish in the most adverse conditions. A man who, with only a pencil, paper, and an infinite imagination, managed to touch the heavens of mathematics and leave us a map of the universe, written in numbers. Ramanujan was a man who, against all social, economic, and cultural barriers, left an eternal mark on the world. A self-taught genius who, from poverty in colonial India, reached infinity through numbers.